Hey everybody, welcome back to Mac and Mike. I'm Mike, and that's Mac on the other end there. I don't know if you can see him or if I'm taking the whole screen right now. Anyway, this week we decided to talk about uh, a video that Mac sent from Jordan Peterson called "The X-Men Under Trump," and it had to do with all the great people that surround Trump, from RFK Jr. to Elon Musk to Ramaswamy to uh, Tulsi Gabbard and everyone. And I'm sure everybody is tired of election stuff, at least the TV commercials, but I think this puts a different perspective on it that won't be as hard to listen to. So, what were your impressions of the video? And I'll link to that later, Mac.
Yeah, Mike, what interested me is Jordan Peterson kind of looked at this eclectic group of supporters that are supporting Donald Trump, not only from a perspective of the quality of the person and their professional experience and their professional success, but also their inside motivations. And I don't want to say a psychoanalyst, but analysis, but something along the lines of, what are their strengths and weaknesses, and what are they likely to be successful at, and where do their strength of character and strength of, abilities lie? When you talk about the people that are supporting Trump, it couldn't be a more diverse group. Vivek Ramaswamy is of Indian descent, and he's an entrepreneur, and he's built a couple of successful companies, and in fact, stepped away from those companies because some of the outspoken words that he was speaking potentially could have hurt his organizations. And then you have Tulsi Gabbard. Tulsi Gabbard is not only a woman, but arguably a woman of color, as much as the vice president running for president, Kamala Harris, is a woman of color, and she was a Democrat, and she spent, I don't know, a couple of terms as a House of Representatives in the state House of Representatives in Hawaii, and then as a member of the House of Representatives in Washington D.C. representing Hawaii. And you got Robert F. Kennedy Jr. You want to talk about the oddity? Jack Kennedy, Robert Kennedy, Ted Kennedy. The Kennedys are synonymous with Democrats. Can you imagine the amount of personal cost there is to Robert F. Kennedy to come out in support of and to campaign for Donald Trump, who basically is, something akin to the Antichrist as far as the Democrats are concerned? Then you have Elon Musk. This man may be the most impressive of all of the group of supporters for Donald Trump, because Elon Musk is a self-made billionaire. I mean, you can hate on him if you want, and you can say that he doesn't deserve to have the platform that he has. But Elon Musk is on track to be the first individual trillionaire in the world. And I think that that's impressive for him to have done that. And as Jordan Peterson mentions, he's taken on like 5 or 6 different impossible tasks and succeeding in all of them. And finally, he mentions, J.D. Vance. And I'll be honest with you, Mike, I didn't know J.D. Vance before Donald Trump announced he was going to be his vice presidential candidate. J.D. Vance really, for the first time 2 years ago, when he ran for U.S. Senate in the state of Ohio, and was elected. That's his first foray into politics, into public service. He was very successful in private business, a relatively wealthy man, not on the order of a Elon Musk or Vivek Ramaswamy, but still, nonetheless, he's not hurting, and he takes care of his family, and he's very Christian. His wife is Indian, but he converted to the Catholic faith a relatively short couple of years ago after looking at the world around him. So what's impressed me the most about J.D. Vance is he's going on these various talk shows and speaking for the Trump agenda. And inevitably he gets attacked, but he doesn't lose his temper. He doesn't go crazy. He doesn't start arguing. What he does is he responds back in clear, concise, factual way, without raising his voice, without being argumentative or disagreeable, and he just states facts, and he consistently comes out ahead of all those that are attacking him or Trump or the Trump agenda. And that is a superpower. I mean, honestly, how many how many people have you seen that are able to withstand the slings and arrows and not come back forcefully and with somewhat of an anger or somewhat of a demonstrative argumentative pitch to it. He's just really, really good at his job. Who would you rather have as vice president, Tim Walz or JD Vance?
Oh yeah, JD, of course. That's the thing I noticed right away in the interviews is he calmly handles every question that's thrown at him that is meant to entrap him or get him to answer in a way that would be counter to the narrative. And he just takes it on every interview and flips it on that person very calmly and in a very logical way. And he never, the thing I love about JD, he never avoids the question. He eventually answers the question. You know how so many, Kamala Harris, known for her, I
Word
was
salad.
born in a middle class family or raised in a middle class family. For every question that she's asked about the economy and what her future intentions are, I
Right.
don't, A, we don't know if that's true, and B, I don't care whether you were born into a middle class family or into a very poor family like JD Vance. My question is, what are you going to do? How are you going to enhance the economy? And that's why I go back to also, I wanted to mention quickly, I started to watch the Joe Rogan interview with Donald Trump. And I was very impressed. It's sort of like, Rogan doesn't let him just meander. And they talked about his meandering and how he brings it back. But I was impressed with how Trump can actually talk in detail about tariffs and
Right.
how historically when they worked. And of course, everybody takes what he says to an extreme. Of course, he's going to be very careful about how he implements tariffs. And, you think about all the input, like you said, that he has from Ramaswamy and JD and Tulsi. He listens, he really, really listens to people.
Yes.
That's the thing. And this crowd around him of X-Men, as Jordan Peterson calls it, I'm sure are really going to help enhance his presidency should we be fortunate enough to have him as president again.
Well, when you talk about the tariffs and the way he speaks about tariffs, our nation at one point in time did not have an income tax, and the funding of the government was in no small way was in fact funded by tariffs.
Mhm.
And you know, his opponents have taken his comments on tariffs and said, which I think is a lie. It's certainly a misrepresentation of the truth. They say, "Oh, Donald Trump is going to institute a 20% sales tax." Well, what they're doing is they're using the idea of tariffs that he may or may not put on any product being imported into this country and say that amounts to a 20% sales tax. Well, that's a lie. It's a lie because you don't know what tariffs he may or may not do, but it's also not any way, shape, or form or a sales tax. It is, in fact, a tariff which only makes our exports to that country equal with the imports we're receiving from that country. In
Right.
other words, if we can't sell cars in China because they put a 20 or 30 or 40% tariff on ours, we're just going to tariff Chinese cars so that it's fair. And I think that makes a lot of sense to protect American jobs. The biggest export the United States has had in the last 100 years? Biggest export we've had is exporting jobs since World War II. We've been, after World War II, we were the only country that was left for the most part undamaged. And we built things for the rest of the world. And then we set up the Marshall Plan so they could buy stuff from us. And then, they bought it with our money in the weirdest kind of way. But, I look at Vivek Ramaswamy. Vivek Ramaswamy ran for president in the primary. He was not successful. Donald Trump won the primary election on the Republican side and won by a fairly large margin. Many people running in that primary might get disappointed. and maybe they'd get angry, and maybe they'd even seek retribution or vengeance, or they'd try to, subvert his campaign. He beat me, I'm going to show him, kind of thing, right? But that's not what Vivek has done. Vivek has some really great ideas, and if you listen to his ideas, they're pretty smart. They're a pretty good group of ideas, and he wants to bring those ideas to a successful Trump presidency, a Trump administration. And I'm certain that Vivek will find a place in the Trump administration where his talents and his intelligence will be put to good use. I mean, I invested in his, he developed several of his own investment organizations. I invested in his DRLL, his drill baby drill fund, and I'm making money off of it. And I think that here's a guy that when he sees an opportunity and he has this idea, he just bulls forward, and he gets things done in a way that is very, very enthusiastic and upbeat, and
Yeah.
he's young. Yeah. And I think that brings a lot of confidence from young voters to support Donald Trump and support this administration and to support Vivek Ramaswamy's ideas.
Yeah. I mean, I told you my second pick for president, if Trump didn't make it, would have been Vivek Ramaswamy. I think at the time you didn't maybe agree with me, but I really, Jordan Peterson points out that he is more of an idealist and he's an idea guy. Now, the danger of being an idea only guy is 1,000 great ideas die every day due to lack of planning and the ability to carry it forward. But
Right,
obviously, Vivek has a knack or a tendency to not just bring forward the idea, but bring it to a logical conclusion
right.
and push it forward. The same thing is true, obviously, with Elon Musk. And, I forget the term Jordan Peterson used, but he talks about the narcissistic tendency, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. We need that somewhat of an ego in order to give us the confidence to move forward. But
And you have to have confidence in order to push against the criticism that's naturally thrown at any new idea.
yeah, but you do need to have a similar level or equal level of agreement or agreeableness.
Right.
One of the things that struck me about Trump was the water problem he noticed in California. For those who are familiar, they have had terrible water problems for many years due to this,
Decades.
yeah, for this fish that they're trying to protect, which they divert all this water that could naturally flow into California out into the ocean. And, California used to have this huge lake in the center of it. And Trump had it all figured out. And all he had to do was get Governor Newsom to sign the papers. And the drought problems and the water problems in California would have been over. But Newsom refused to sign the agreement. And he was asked whether it was because of political reasons or environmental reasons. And Trump wasn't sure, but I think it was a combination of the two. The environmentalists have their fingers in his political donations. That's how
Absolutely.
much money they make is they can control governors, which is really that's a lot of money flowing into these environmental agencies.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And everybody wants clean water and clean air.
And everybody wants to have enough water too. They don't build reservoirs in California anymore. There's a moratorium on building reservoirs because of the same people, the environmentalists. They don't want to mess up the ecosystem of California.
And the
And it's so
wildfires.
crazy. It's so crazy because, as you noted, California gets a lot of rain, but unfortunately, the rain basically just washes into the ocean and becomes salt water, and it's never used by the people who need it. And that's a conscious decision that they've made on purpose. Yep, it's stupid.
Same with the wildfires and clearing out the forests. I mean, if the Europeans, I've been over to Germany and you get into the Black Forest in Germany, and Europe has been there so long. They've used so much of their wood,
Hmm.
their trees. They now protect those things like they're gold. And the way they do it is they clean up the deadfalls in their forests.
Yep.
Have volunteers that go out. They have special holidays that surround it, where
Yep.
the people get out and they rake it up and they clean it up as best they can. It's a precious commodity, and
Yep.
we're just squandering it because of, I don't know,
Did
wrong
you know?
wrong
Did
ideas.
you do you know that's how Tulsi Gabbard got involved with politics initially? She lived in Hawaii. She was not born in Hawaii, but she lived in Hawaii, and she was an environmentalist. She wanted to save the pristine Hawaiian countryside, and not just the countryside, but also the waters and everything. And as a young woman, barely able to serve, barely able as age to serve in the state house, and she beat an incumbent that everyone thought was unbeatable. But she was so passionate and so vibrant and so full of exuberance and confidence that she won the election and won a couple of elections after that. I don't know if you know this about Tulsi Gabbard, but she was in the Hawaiian National Guard and she was also a member of the Hawaiian um, um, House of Representatives. And the commander of her unit moved her out of a primary position that was going to be deployed so that she could stay home and stay in the House of Representatives and not be deployed. And when she found out, she crossed trained and qualified for another position within that unit so she could go. And she insisted on going. In other words, the commander of her unit gave her a perfect excuse to not go, and she fought and worked hard to qualify herself to go because she was so upset that her position in the Hawaiian House of Representatives would give her an out to not be deployed. Now, there's an amount of integrity and an amount of what's the word I'm looking for, Mike? Honesty, more than that. Self-sacrifice, I don't know, selflessness. But to me, that's a above and beyond kind of move. You know what I mean?
It
One,
is.
to be honest.
Yeah. I've always liked Tulsi. As a matter of fact, I could almost see the next group up as JD running for president and her for vice president. And then after JD's done, Tulsi Gabbard running for president. I think Jordan Peterson even mentioned that she would be the epitome of what you would expect from the first female president of the United States.
I agree with you. I agree with you. She definitely has the right stuff, as they say, right?
Yep,
Well, she was a lieutenant colonel, and I think she still is a
still
lieutenant
is.
colonel
Yeah,
in the National Guard. So she clearly has, leadership skills that are utilized within the military. There's no doubt about that. And, having run for president on the Democratic ticket and actually debated Kamala Harris. Remember the not this was it 2016, I think, or was it 2020?
well, it was 2019
Okay.
for the
So,
2020 election.
she comes from a state that the politics are all Democrat. So she too is risking her political career by supporting Donald Trump. And I think she has 18 years in service with the Hawaii State House and the U.S. House of Representatives. That's a pretty good chunk of your life to be walking away from. Have you read her book? Leave the Democratic Party, Save America, whatever the title is.
No, I'm still working on Kat Timp's book. I was listening to that on a trip down to North Carolina and back a little bit. So no, I haven't gotten to Tulsi's book yet.
We'll put that on your list of things to do. And talking about risking your political career, what about Robert F. Kennedy Jr.? It's funny. Kennedy has long been on the eco-friendly train. He's also been on the train of let's not poison our kids, let's not harm our kids. You know, what do we have? When my kids were young, I think we had five different vaccinations they got, right? Measles, mumps, rubella, whooping cough, something. Now, is it they have 72 different vaccinations for babies now for young people? Is that the right number?
I really don't know, and I have grandkids. I could ask my daughter at some point.
At what point do you think that poking a needle in our grandchildren or great grandchildren that often may lead to some of these problems that we're having in health problems that we're having in our world today? I get a kick out of it when they advertise drugs on television. They tell you all the great things it'll do, and then it says, by the way, don't take this drug if you're allergic to this or the side effects of this drug are you'll get headaches and sweats and you'll want to vomit, and in some cases you'll die. Well, I don't want to take a drug that's going to kill me. So what about these vaccinations? Are they truly safe? Are they? Because Robert F. Kennedy says they're not. I don't know if he's right or wrong, but that's his passion. He wants to work on that issue. Would you think it would be a good thing or a bad thing to have someone who has the president's ear, whose primary objective is to make Americans healthy and to make our healthcare system safe for all human beings?
Yeah, I think it's worth investigating. I know there's a lot of controversy, and I'm sure a lot of it's overblown, but there are things happening to our people worldwide. The thing that keeps coming to mind is the testosterone level.
Yes,
If that declines any further, it's behind the population shrinkage as well.
sure. Yep.
People hear that and they go, "Oh, testosterone, we need less of that because that drives what
Toxic
toxic
masculinity.
masculinity." Yeah, but without it, the species will just eventually dwindle to nothing. And we don't know what's behind it. People say it's GMOs, genetically modified foods, and other people say it's all the vaccinations, and other people say, well, it's just the natural course of human evolution or the body. And I don't know, but with all of our science, we certainly should be able to do the studies that figure all this out, keep our kids healthy, and keep the human species moving forward.
Well, GMOs are another thing that Kennedy wants to look into because he's an advocate for healthy America and he's an advocate for kids. He wants to look at this idea of transgender surgeries for children that cannot be reversed. Do you remember when we were kids, we had the food pyramid?
Yeah,
Do you remember when sugar frosted flakes were on the food pyramid?
I don't,
Somehow,
but somebody
somehow I somehow I don't think that sugar frosted flakes are really in belong in that food pyramid. You know what I'm
yeah,
saying?
cereal
So,
in general.
well, I guess what I'm saying, Mike, is that um, somebody has to be looking over these massive influences that are influence America and what we eat, what we drink, what we consume. Um, you know how when they shoot these turkeys full of hormones to make them butterballs or big fat turkeys, is that healthy for Americans? Has anybody really looked at that? What about all our beef? Beef used to be just regular beef, and now it's what 800, 1,000 pounds on the hoof, and they get it there by shooting it full of hormones. Do those hormones injected into our cows, into our beef cows, does that have any impact on our health? Maybe on our testosterone. I don't know the answer to that. Do you?
No, it's funny you mentioned that because I went over to my youngest daughter's house to help with Halloween yesterday, and here her whole back of her van was filled with beef, and it was ground beef, filet mignons, T-bones, everything. And she had bought like a quarter of a cow or something.
Right.
They sliced it all up, or half a cow. I don't know what it was. It was a lot, and it's one of these cows that's free range, grass fed, and works out the whole thing $3.57 a pound.
Wow.
That was just amazing.
Yeah.
If you got the freezer storage space,
Yeah.
the way to
Yeah.
go.
Yeah. I have a couple of relatives that do that. They live farther out of the suburban areas and into more rural areas. And they know farmers and, like a brother and a sister or four members of the family would go to a farm and say, hey, look, we'll buy the whole cow at a fixed price. And then the butcher takes the cow and they pay the butcher and they divide it up four ways and there they go.
Yeah. So it's going to be good
And
eating.
which is a great idea, by the way, right? Buying your own cow is a great idea. And who has more great ideas than Elon Musk? What does he have going now? He's got the Neuralink. He's
Yeah.
got Tesla automobiles. He's got SpaceX. He's got Skylink. He's got robots, the Tesla robot that he's making now. What's the other thing? He's got something else.
The
That's
boring company.
yeah, the one that Donald Trump was at a meeting of advisors one time, and this is coming from another advisor. It wasn't Musk, it wasn't Donald Trump. And all these advisors are saying, well, you could do a tax cut or you could do this. And Trump supposedly, as the story goes, looks at Elon Musk. He said, Elon, you haven't had much to say. So what would you like to see us do? Elon says, I want to build a high-speed train from New York to Washington, D.C. I want to do it underground. And not a person in the room doubted that he could do it.
Right.
That's the crazy part, right? And Donald Trump supposedly laughed a little bit and said, "Sure, Elon, you start working on it." He said, "We'll look at that." And that's the whole thing. When you have not only the vision, not only the entrepreneurship, but the drive to complete it, I guarantee you, if he started it, he would finish it, and it would be done in a relatively short period of time. Imagine boring a tunnel underground with a high-speed train that picks you up in New York City and delivers you in DC in 26 minutes. That's insane, right? That's not possible, is it? I guarantee he'll do it.
Yeah.
And
Well,
that's why Elon Musk, as a part of the Trump X-Men team, is so incredibly powerful.
yeah, that's why Elon Musk talked about we can't even build a high-speed rail system in America due to regulations and the environmental impact studies that go along with it. Like, look at California. They tried just to create, what, a train from LA to San Francisco and couldn't do it and spent how many billions of dollars. And then the 42 billion that was given for high-speed internet, he won a portion of that, but then the regulations, they wouldn't let him put the things in. And he pointed out, had that stuff been in place, they would have not had near the problems with communications in the hurricane-stricken zones,
Yep.
Georgia and North Carolina. But that's where, he says, look, I am for regulation. I am for reasonable regulation. We need it. And we do. But it's like everything, Mac. We go so far on this pendulum swing. We go too far in one direction. With that being said, we're at 2 minutes 53 seconds until this is going to cut off. But
Well, let's hit JD Vance for a couple of minutes because JD Vance was his selection as vice president. And it was when he first announced it, it was kind of like an odd or just, not the kind of pick you would have thought. I mean, here's a guy that's been in politics for 2 years, right? He wasn't in politics at all, and then 2 years ago ran for and successfully won the Senate seat. But you've seen him on various interviews. What's your impression?
I told you earlier, my impression of JD Vance is he's the best pick you could possibly have. Um, I didn't know much about him either. I'd seen him on television. I'd heard about his book. But again, he is so quick on his feet, and he's not phony, and he's not trying. He's putting no effort into the way he handles people. This is the real J.D. Vance. He's not a politician. He's a human being that thinks clearly, has a good mind for details, and knows how to look at things from all different angles. And that's J.D. Vance. That's the kind of guy you need.
He's unflappable. It doesn't
Unflappable.
matter what they throw at him. He's unflappable. And what I like about JD Vance is that it doesn't matter what question they ask him or how they ask it. Because many times they ask a question, it's a gotcha question, you know? Do you still beat your wife? The presumption there in that question is at least at some point in time he did. And he'll just stop them. He'll say, "Excuse me, Martha, that's an inappropriate question because none of what you just said is accurate or true. Let me tell you what the real deal is, you know?" And that unflappable and that being able to take a moment, collect your thoughts, and then speak with truth and with conviction on so many issues is just very uncommon in politics. And I predict one day he will be president of the United States. It may not be this election if Donald Trump, doesn't win, but certainly in the future, J.D. Vance is a candidate you can watch for to be president because the man has good, solid values. And I like what Jordan Peterson says about him. He says, a lot of people that rise from that level of poverty to a level of great achievement, whether that be financial or popularity or in status. He said many of those people forget where they came from and they're almost embarrassed that they are the product of that environment. And they kind of try to hide it. And he said one of the beautiful things about J.D. Vance is he doesn't hide it. He builds on it. He
Okay.
popularizes it. He embraces it.
All
And I
right.
think that
Mac and
makes him
Mike
different. Out.
out.